Hi everybody, welcome to my next video. I'm the Cotswolds girl and I am here bringing you some awesome content about real life stuff, journeys that I've been through, a few little tips and tricks. We can have some gossip, and I'm going to show you a few of my goodies that I've received this week from a few of my brands. So they're really awesome, so stay tuned. But today I wanted to put out this video about something that's really personal to me, and it's going to be about my journey through infertility. And I just putting it out there now, it's very personal and very scary, and to do something like this and exposing yourself to the world and opening yourself up, you know, for all the good and the bad. But the overriding reason that I wanted to do this was because during the lowest point of my journey, I was online trying to seek some sort of advice or answers or anything that could sort of help me through it all, and so that I didn't feel like I was really alone and going through it all by myself, and that, you know, that I was trying to find someone that, you know, or some had been through all of this before. And to be honest, there wasn't a huge amount. You know, when you search for, you know, infertility stuff, you know, on the internet, you get a whole lot of things coming up about, oh, do acupuncture and you'll fall pregnant within 3 months, or try this pill because this helped me, or drink this concoction in the morning, or rub this cream on your belly, and, you know, all of this sort of, you know, for want of a better word, quackery. It really didn't help with the real sort of emotional side of what I was going through. And that's, I guess, one of the driving reasons why I'm sort of doing these videos is, you know what, maybe it's a bit of a cathartic thing for me to sort of get it out there, but if I can, you know, provide any advice or just even give someone just that little bit of hope that they're not alone, that, you know, people have been through this journey, they know how hard it is, and, you know, just to take a bit of heart from that, then that's really what I'm going to do. So I guess walking through my sort of journey, it was all very much, okay, well, you know, right from the age of dot, really, I would never questioned that I was going to be a parent. I'd always thought that, you know what, you know, my time will come. You know, I've got plenty of time ahead of me. I really need to focus on my career. I really need to focus on my friendship groups. I need to, you know, make sure that I've got everything in place in my life. Then I'll have a family. And that's just the way that, you know, you sort of grow up, and maybe it's somewhat conditioned into, and maybe it's sort of part of what I saw my parents as well, you know, back in the day. Like, I mean, I'm a early 80s child, and, you know, my parents were married in the 70s, and, you know, they finished school. My dad went to university, got a university degree, he was working, they'd just built a house, and then I came along. And it was just sort of sounded like it was the natural order. I come from a big family. My dad's one of 6, and so I always had oodles and oodles and oodles of cousins growing up, and, you know, it never seemed that it was going to be something that it's not something I ever took for granted, but it wasn't ever something that I thought I'd be challenged with. And so as I was sort of progressing through my teenage years, I really didn't give it much thought. And then come my sort of early to mid 20s, you know, all of my friends were sort of in that pattern. They'd met their other halves. They were sort of getting engaged, getting married, you know, and starting their sort of families in their sort of early to mid 20s. And that was really great. And I thought that, you know, that was something that I was involved with, and, you know, and again, my time would come. As the years sort of ticked by, and, you know, you sort of get to your, you know, 27, 28, and it's all happening around you. And at that point in time, I'd had a partner for sort of 6, 7 years, and, you know, I kept sort of looking at my watch, you know, when I'm sure my time's coming, I'm just going to wait it out. You know, being in a long-term relationship, you don't really necessarily think that it's not going to happen. We bought a house, we'd travelled overseas, you know, we got really good professional jobs, and I never really gave it any thought. You know, my time would come, that's fine, just wait it out. And it started getting to a point where, you know, I was hitting, you know, an age where it had a 3 in front of it. And, you know, my friends were, you know, having their second children and, you know, starting to talk about, you know, what you do, you know, what nurseries they were going to, what schools they'd enrolled them in. And I'm sort of thinking, well, I'm sort of being a bit left behind here. Why? Like, I don't quite understand. And it was a really, really hard and difficult conversation that I had with my other half at the time. We'd been together nearly 10 years at that point, and you know, I'd been a devoted girlfriend. I'd, you know, mixed in with all of his friends. I was doing all the right things, as I thought in my head. So, you know, now was the time. And for want of better putting a better word on it, you know, the clock was ticking. And I think all females in the back of their heads probably have that sort of little thought process going through. It's like, oh, it'll happen, but I don't want to wait too long because, you know, the clock's ticking. And it started sort of creeping in a little bit about, okay, well, you know, maybe, you know, I've got to really take the bull by the horns and, you know, put it to him, you know, is this ever going to happen? Because, you know, I want, for my future, you know, I want to be married, I want to have a family, I want to be doing all these things. And it wasn't a matter of, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. It was just the life plan that I had for myself. So that's where I sort of got to. We had our 10-year anniversary, and to be honest, I booked a winery tour, I did a photo book, and, you know, arranged all these cool things. And I got basically nothing in return. It was at that point that I realised, right, this is going nowhere, this is completely one-sided. And at the age of 31, after 10 years in a relationship, it ended. So I ended it. And then entering your 30s as a single woman wanting to have a family, it hit me like a freight train. It really did, and I was really scared, optimistic, but on a timeline. I was like, right, okay, this has got to happen. It's got to happen in the next 5 years. So I moved interstate. I made a whole new circle of friends. I was going to meetup groups. I was, you know, putting myself out there to, you know, do everything I could to find someone. I joined a new rowing club. I joined a netball club. All these things, putting myself out there, and it just wasn't happening again. So I kept saying to myself, okay, well, you know, just have faith, you know, I'm sure it will happen. You know, I went to see a couple of really good, you know, psychic mediums, and yes, I'm into that, who, you know, were very, very good, got a very good international reputation, and they were saying, yes, it's going to happen, you'll meet you someone, and blah, blah, blah. And that was great. That gave me a bit of restitution. And then again, the years started ticking by, and I'm hitting my mid-30s. Come my 37th birthday, I'm thinking, I'm in problems. I've got, like, this is nowhere near where I wanted it to be. At that point, I sort of started thinking, well, maybe I need to freeze my eggs. Like, maybe I need to do that. But again, this is going back, you know, 8 years, 9 years ago now, which during that sort of period of time, people were starting to do it, but it was expensive, and it wasn't really that well known. So I'm like, oh, do you know what? I've got faith. It'll be fine. No problems. Don't worry about it. So I didn't do it, but I started getting checks. So I went to the doctor. I had an internal sonogram and all of that, and that came back normal. So that was fine. Take a breath. You know, let's not panic, but, you know, it needs to happen. And I was lucky that, you know, during that year, I met someone at work who had just come over from the UK. This is in Australia. He was on a working holiday visa, and had just joined my company that I was working for. So all went really well. We sort of started seeing each other, and within sort of 6 months or so, we were engaged. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. This is my time. It's happening now. This is my time. And we then started making plans, which was absolutely fantastic. The only thing that started creeping into my head, again, all in my head, he is 7 years younger than me. So he'd just turned 30 and I was 37. And again, that sort of brings up all of these sort of little insecurities that goes through your head. You know, is he going to be ready in the next couple of years to have kids? You know, he's going to be a dad at 32, you know, potentially. Who knows? So we just kept our relationship going, moved back to the UK in 2019, and set up home and did all of that, which was great. And then COVID hit. And so we ended up being in lockdown. He was isolated from me. He was elsewhere down sort of near Cornwall, and I was staying with his mother up in Hertford. And that was fine, but again, we didn't see each other for probably, like physically, for probably 6 months. By that time I was, you know, I'm turned 40 in lockdown. Another one of these babies that didn't have a 40th birthday and had to try and scrimp to try and even get some toilet paper. Anyway, that was a fun party. Side note. So anyway, after lockdown had sort of happened and I was made redundant from work, I had to go and get a job over in Ireland because that was the only way that I could get sponsorship to stay over here at that point. So moved to Ireland, and again, I was sort of on and off flying to and from. During that time, my husband had a massive flare-up of psoriasis, his whole body covered head to toe. So literally couldn't move, couldn't be close to each other, and to be honest, he was shedding like a snake, so there was no way that I was getting anywhere near that. So that then sort of delayed things again. So by the time we got married in 2022, I was 42, 41 turning 42, and the pressure was really on. And we started thinking about, right, we've got to get on to you know, doing a family and whatever. And we were trying to have a child, and it just wasn't happening. So we made the decision, right, we're going to go and get our tests done, and we're going to go and see a fertility clinic just to see what the issue is. Went through all of those tests, which are, look, they're not great, they're pretty invasive and pretty confronting, especially for a bloke, you know. Without putting a finer point on it, you know, you're shuttled into a room with Wi-Fi and a couch, and off you do, you know, you do you. So it's not exactly a great environment, but we found out after all of that, when our tests came back, that not only was my egg quality not there, but also his stuff wasn't quite up to scratch as well. So we just went through a massive grieving process. Like we just thought, well, this is never going to happen for us. I guess more on my side as well, I had to deal with the grief of, it was either donor eggs, or nothing. Because again, so even if we go through IVF, you know, we end up being successful in that, I get pregnant, whatever, the child's not going to have my DNA. And how did I feel about that? You know, so there was a massive grieving process around all of this. We went through some pretty dark moments, and it was really quite, do you know what, it made our relationship stronger. It really did, just having to be confronted with all of this stuff that you never, ever, ever think that you'll have to confront. But once you're in it, you know. And it was really hard to talk to anyone about it because they hadn't lived it. So they didn't know what the emotions were. They weren't, you know, they couldn't quite understand why every time I saw one of my friends getting pregnant, rather than being so joyous and happy, which I was, it felt I had really jealous feelings, and I had angry feelings about it, you know. And so it was a real process of me dealing with all of that, but not having necessarily anyone to talk to about it other than my husband. And bless his cotton socks, all he wanted to do was just make it better for me, but there wasn't anything that he could do. So anyway, we went through the IVF process. We found a donor, an egg donor, and so we started going through that process. And the first couple of times, no, it didn't work. The third time, it did work, and we did get pregnant, and that was amazing. But we then had a miscarriage, probably two at about 7 or 8 weeks, and I was devastated, absolutely devastated. It was just that was our last embryo, so we didn't have any more embryos. We had to go through the whole process again. There were no more stored eggs, so I'd have to go back on the donor list. And not only that, in your early 40s, having put all of those drugs into me, I think I probably gained about 4 stone, and it's hard to get off. So I was really depressed because I was fat. I wasn't feeling good about myself. I was grieving the loss of the pregnancy. It was just a bit of a spiral, and it was just awful. But what we then decided was, okay, well, we can go back and do it all again and keep trying, or why don't we consider adoption? And that in itself was my light bulb moment. And for me, it was such an easy decision to go down the adoption route, because I'd already dealt with the fact that any child that I was potentially going to have wouldn't have my DNA. So for me, it was, well, even if I did fall pregnant, it was the child wasn't going to have my DNA. So how is that different to adopting a child that's not going to have my DNA? I'm still going to be their mother. I'm still going to give them a wonderful life. So for me, it was a really easy decision. And I've got adoptive cousins over in Canada, so I'd had adoption in the family before, and it was something that I was very familiar with, and so that's sort of where we sort of got to at the end of all that process. I think it's taken my husband a lot longer to get his head around the stage that we're at, and that's completely understandable. It took me a while to get to that point where I was okay with knowing that whatever child we will be raising may not necessarily have our DNA, and that didn't matter. So yeah, so we're now at the pointy end of things where we are starting the adoption process. I'll do another video on that as we go through the various different stages, but I guess I wanted to sort of share my experience and share the feelings of, if you are going through all of that and you are feeling, you do feel angry, or you do feel jealous, or you are grieving, that's so normal. And that's something that everyone goes through. Not everyone talks about, not everyone puts it out there, because I think there is a little bit of shame around it. Not necessarily as I would, the right thing. I don't think that there is any shame around it, but maybe there is a bit of a stigma, but there doesn't need to be. So look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. There's sharing a little bit more about my journey. I will be back over the next couple of days with my next update, but please like, share and subscribe. I'm really trying to build this channel out. I'm really passionate about it, and I hope that I can build a wonderful community of people who are very open and very genuine, and like to talk about things that have affect life, because we're all in this together, and we don't make it out the other end, so it's nice to feel part of something. So anyway, be safe, treat each other with kindness, and I'll see you in my next video.